Ooh, you didn't tell me you were a brainiac.
Yo, 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 welcome in, you brainiacs. NFL Week 7 in the books. We had a wild Week 7. I'm excited to have you all here. I am Alan Casanova Castro. Slaps is not with us.
Dang.
He didn't die, I don't think. Maybe
I haven't talked to him since
this
this morning.
Memorial. But I got my man Scotty here with us. Scotty, how you feeling? How'd you enjoy the weekend? You feeling better?
I am feeling a little better. I had strep throat last week. It's been day number 8 of barely being able to speak. It worked out pretty well because it started right when we did the last episode, and now it's kind of finishing right at this episode, so I can speak. I'm probably going to be hacking up a lot, so hopefully you like to listen to that if you're the pervert. But I feel pretty good, and football this weekend, at least the morning games were a lot of fun. The afternoon games were a little bit snoozers, but we got some good stuff to discuss today, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. I think you and Debo might have both had strep, ? I'm not sure.
I think he was throwing up.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, he looked like when they like zoomed in on him as he was running off the field, and it looked like he was like trying not to puke all over himself on TV.
Yeah, he definitely looked in puke stage. If any of us have, I'm sure we've all been there, whether we've been drinking or you've been sick, you know what that looks like, and he definitely had that. Maybe he just partied too hard. We'll see. But was a fun and wild Week 7. We had a lot. We're excited to bring this episode to you. We had Aaron Rodgers eating his boogers. Watson's Achilles bit the dust, and Mahomes can't throw touchdowns, but he can run for them now? ? Maybe. So we'll get to all of that and more on today's episode. But first, got to shout out our sponsor, Erica's Healthy Pet, ericashealthypet.com, where you can get locally owned, chemical preservative-free, and affordable pet food, treats, and other accessories. They got the turkey jerky. They got the chicken jerky, the beef liver chews. We still, I don't think, have yet to try any of these ourselves, but we do know a lot of brainiacs out there have purchased it and have gotten a lot of rave reviews. The animals love it. There's also puppy balm, a ton of things on there. Just, they have the flea and tick repellent, literally anything you can think of for your furry loved ones. ericashealthypet.com has that for you. And as an added bonus for LeatherBrainz listeners, if you put in the code LB20, you get 20% off your first order at ericashealthypet.com, not Erica's Healthy Pets. I don't know where that'll take you, and you could try to use our code on that, but I don't know. But it's ericashealthypet.com, LB20 for 20% off your first order. All right. Let's get into it. Let's get into the games. I love ripping right from the hip. We're going to talk about another game, another day of pretending the Broncos are good, ? Or was just this the unfortunate the schedule alignment where they got to play Spencer Rattler? Broncos win this one 33-10 over the Saints on somewhat of a kind of miserable Thursday night game. I don't think too many people, there's more memes about this game being bad than there was actually memes about this game being good. So if that's anything to tell you how this one went, Saints were missing 9 of their starters, both sides of the ball, which we're kind of in that mode right now, aren't we, I just kind of like I feel like all these games you could just go down a list of like, all right, this guy's dead, this guy's dead.
Fantasy's impossible right now. I mean, it's just
literally.
You have, I'm in, I think 5 leagues this year, and every single one of them, I'm just like, well, I can't put any competent starting lineup together without spending a bunch of time making trades, and I'm just like kind of over fantasy at this point in time. Like, the injuries have gotten so bad that I'm like only kind of half paying attention to fantasy, because I'm like, well, if I win, it's going to be bullshit luck. If I lose, it's because half my team is dead. So it is what it is. It's just the way the NFL is right now.
Yeah, and this game didn't have Derek Carr, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed is obviously out for the year. So we got to see probably the ultimate marquee quarterback lineup of Bo Nix versus Spencer Rattler, which is probably what all NFL TV execs were like, Oh yeah,
Yeah.
fuck yeah. People
Prime
are getting up for this one, baby. Scotty, what do you think of the Broncos? Did we learn anything here? Did we not learn anything? Were this just two bad teams just pillow fighting it on Thursday night? What do you got for me?
Well, we've been kind of going back and forth on this show and just in the general NFL discourse about the Broncos and what they look like, because on some games they look kind of competent, and you compare them to the Russell Wilson Broncos, and they have, a lot more to be excited about, I think, going into the future now than they did just a year ago. But I might be just surrounded by too many Broncos fans. That happens. I live in the Midwest, so I get just inundated with all these delusional Broncos fans who are like, hell yeah, like we're on the up and up, we're moving in the right direction, we got a good record, we got a new quarterback. It's like, guys, okay, you beat the Saints. The Saints were missing half of their team. They were missing their entire offense and were playing a rookie quarterback for only his second ever start. Like, the Broncos are still a bad team. And I think the general NFL fandom kind of is on that page, but man, the Broncos fans are just looking for anything to be excited about right now.
Yeah, and you know what? I like the spot that Broncos fans are in, because it's like tempered excitement. Like, you're probably not going to win much, but it's like every game you win, you're like, oh yeah, baby, another one under the belt. And ironically enough, since Peyton Manning, the Broncos, I feel like, are still looking for their quarterback. And I still feel like they're looking for that in Bo Nix. You and I texted right after he made that throw where he like overthrew his tight end, but underthrew his wide receiver. And like they both were wide open, and probably one of the more impossible throws for somebody to make. It's like when my wife watches and she sees the kickers hit the goalpost, she's like, I know they're not trying to hit the goalpost, but man, it really feels like they're trying to. And that one from Bo Nix, I just think underscored his performance. I think he can obviously run. The Broncos sitting, third in the AFC West, just trailing the Chargers. We'll see what they do. We'll see how that game wraps up. But like, it's like, this doesn't feel like they're going anywhere, but they got a winning record. And some TV analysts will say, you are what your record says you are. And that's what they are. They're a 4-3 team.
Yeah, I mean, I won't fault them. They haven't had the most difficult schedule. They've won some good games. And you can't control that as a team. You can only play the people that are put in front of you. And they've won most of their games. So it is what it is. When you look at the product on the field, and especially Bo Nix, like coming out and within the first series and throwing the ball, like it was hilarious to watch it on TV, because you have the tight end, you have the wide receiver. There are no defenders in the frame. Like, it's just these two wide open players 10 yards from the end zone, and the ball just gets nowhere near either of them. And it's just one play. Bo Nix has had some good plays. He's had some bad plays, but you see that and you're just like, okay, they haven't figured anything out.
100%. The only other thing to note in this one is, I don't know if you saw at the end of the game, Alvin Kamara went up and gave his old coach a warm embrace, and apparently was said, come get me, or I'm trying to get out of here. There was some, I mean, I don't think we'll ever know the true origin of that comment. He probably just said, you smell good. But I think for fans, it's fun to talk about that. And then there was some rumors of the Saints maybe shopping Alvin Kamara here, as they're in basically cap hell. I know we say the salary cap isn't real, but for the Saints, it's actually very real. So we'll see what happens with that. Two teams obviously kind of trying to figure out their season. Two other teams trying to figure out their season. If you got up early and we're watching two teams battle each other out in old London town, we had the Jags and the Pats. Jags, thankfully, Doug Pederson, some were saying, was playing for his job. And I think we could say he's on week-to-week life support right now with this Jags organization. But they pulled this one out 32-16 over the Patriots. I don't know if you got up early to watch this game. I think for me, the only interest was obviously from my dynasty team. I wanted to see how Drake May was, just to see how he did. And he outdueled Trevor Lawrence statistically. He put up 276 yards of passing and 2 touchdowns, no picks. Looked pretty good. The Pats team is in a world of hurt in general, but I don't know what you thought of this one. Doug Pederson, did he outcoach anybody, or was just thank God he got on the flight back home, or what are we thinking?
Doug Pederson is thanking God he played the Patriots. And not only that, but the fact that they stayed over in Europe for a full week and got acclimated to the time change. Like, I'm sure that makes a huge difference, but I don't know. I was talking to one of my buddies about this game, and I'm like, this is one of those games that, like, I normally kind of look forward to the Europe games because it's just it's just bonus 3 hours of football. So, like, I can wake up earlier and still get more football, and that's awesome. But in this one, I was like, if I'm awake, I'll watch it. But I wasn't like real excited about looking forward to it. Doug Pederson, he literally Euro-stepped the firing in this game, because if you look at the rest of their schedule, I'm concerned about this. They play in a row the Packers, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Lions, and the Texans. So this team has looked terrible. This is a tough stretch for any team in the NFL. So I want to ask you, what's the over-under on how many games does he have left? Because I think it's pretty much a sure thing now that he's getting fired this season.
Yeah.
So is it, the game that I'm circling kind of over this stretch is the Eagles, because the Eagles kind of look like they've underperformed a little bit. Obviously, this week they played a pretty good game, but all those other teams, you can almost say, okay, these teams are just some of the best teams in football.
Yeah.
You're not expecting much. But the Eagles, if you go get blown out by the Eagles with how they've played so far in 2024, I'm like, that might be the one that chops them.
Eagles, they've also been battling injuries. We've said at the beginning, we're going to talk about every game. We're going to be like, oh, they're battling injuries like everybody is at this point. But before I answer your question, because I think that's a tough schedule. Packers, Eagles, Vikings, Lions, Texans. Any NFL team right now would be hard pressed to win half of those. Like those are solid teams, especially with the way the Packers are playing right now. The Texans are in a little bit of a lull offensively, but they can figure it out, and they're battling injuries. The more you get away from Doug Pederson winning the Super Bowl with the Eagles and how he did it with Nick Foles, how he beat Belichick and Tom Brady is still going to be one of the more perplexing things in NFL history when you go back and look. That team just caught ultimate fire in the playoffs, because you look, Nick Foles is nowhere to be seen. Doug Peterson's about to be on his way out with the Jags, and you're just like, how did that even happen? Looking at this, I think if you're the Jags, I think it's now it's about the optics. I think if they get absolutely boat raced in one of these next upcoming games, I think he's going to be gone. I think you're going to see they're just going to make a move, because he's pretty much already lost the locker room. The old famous head coach quote he had, was it 2 weeks ago? He's like, I haven't lost the locker room. Means you lost the locker room. So now I think it's about the optics for the organization. I think if they're competitive, like, listen, Packers, Eagles, fight, like those are all tough games. If they're close, if they're showing like some sort semblance of progress or that there's some development at all, they'll probably keep him on life support. But if they get boat raced and the team's just giving up, they're going to have to pull the plug. So I'm going to put it at over under 2. I'm going to say 2 games.
Yeah, I think that's about right. And I don't know, something about this Eagles game is just screaming at me from the back of my mind. So I'm going to go under.
You think the Eagles one is that what does it? You think
assuming they look like they have for every week this season besides against the worst teams in the NFL, yeah, I think the Eagles are kind of on the up and up now after they performed this last week. I think there's a good chance that the Eagles, Saquon rushes for 125 yards and a couple scores. They have their weapons back now on offense, and that's going to make a big difference. We could see a little bit of a resurgence from the Eagles, and if that happens against the Jaguars, I think Doug is screwed. But I do want to answer the question about Drake May, because Drake May looks awesome. Like, if you're a Patriots fan right now, your team's kind of in the dumpster at this point in time. You don't have anything anywhere, and your own coach is calling you soft for some reason. But Drake May, like, with no weapons, with no defense, is coming out and actually looking great. And that is something you could at least hang your hat on. If you had to choose between being a Patriots fan or a Panthers fan right now, like, there's no question about it. You are hopping on board the Patriots train.
Oh, yeah. And I think a little egg on our face right now because, both of us are resident Chiefs fans here. We're like, oh, Mahomes can't do anything without any weapons. But then you look at what Drake May's doing with literally no weapons, and you're like, all right, so it can be done. I know the level of competition is a little different, but through what real time? 2 games played? What's Drake May played? 2 games. He's thrown for 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks. Like, he's got a rating of 95. Like, he's playing really, really exceptionally well, considering his line sucks and he's throwing to, Hunter Henry pretty much. And it's like, all right, well, let's figure out how this goes. I'm pretty encouraged too. I think they're cooking with something. I think they just need to show a little bit more progress, but they got something with Drake for sure.
How many passing touchdowns does Patrick Mahomes have right now through 2024?
I think he has 6.
See, that's a
he
tough
has 6.
look. It's
a tough look, man.
At the end of the day, you can always, as Chiefs fans, we're just going to say, well, we don't lose games. But Drake May, there's no doubt about it that he is outperforming expectations. But what about Trevor Lawrence on the flip side of things? He's been playing okay. but are we going to be having a conversation? It feels like he's like him and Justin Herbert are just in that same boat where it's just like they seem like they have a ton of potential. It seems like we could envision them being really, really good, but it just never happens. And I don't know when we're going to start having a real conversation about Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think this is problem with Trevor Lawrence is, and it's going to go back to his days at Clemson. He peaked so unbelievably early at Clemson as a freshman, beating Alabama when Alabama was at the peak of its powers, and Clemson was, kind of riding that wave from Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence, and now you're like, he wins it as a freshman. If you look after his freshman season, he kind of leveled out. Like, he didn't have that peak, but I think people look to that as like a marker in time of like, he's going to be the next Hall of Fame QB in the NFL. And it just hasn't panned out for him. And there could be a multitude of reasons, but I think that it kind of is what he is. That's how he was towards the end of his career at Clemson. He kind of struggled in some of the bigger moments. And I think people just rode the wave that like, he's going to be the number one overall pick. And he certainly had he had all the talent in the world to do it. And, he's not having a bad year. I think the unfortunate thing is the rest of his team is kind of shitting the bed, but he hasn't had a bad year. He's thrown for 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He's got a rating over 90. He's certainly not the reason they're losing. I don't think Trevor Lawrence right now, if you look at him, is ever going to be the reason you're going to win either. I don't think he's ever going to go out and just take over like a Josh Allen can do or Joe Burrow can do. I think he just kind of is what he is, and he's going to be that like he's got that mold of honestly like a Kirk Cousins. Like, he's going to be solid. He's not going to go out and win an MVP, but I think that just kind of is where he is right now. Yeah. Speaking of is what he is right now, and somebody that's looked amazing who was trying to go perfect again was Jared Goff playing against the Vikings. They win on a last-second field goal, 31-29. I actually listened to this one on the radio driving back home. I was actually in Kansas City this past weekend. We were driving back. One of my favorite things to do is actually listen to football. I don't know why. It's just like the most pure form. It's almost like listening to baseball games. Like, I love listening to it. It's the best. So I actually had the opportunity to listen to this game. This was a fun game. If you happen to either listen or watch this one, super, super exciting. It was back and forth. There was at one point the Lions scored on 4 straight drives. Jared Goff looked amazing again, just staying within the system. Winning this game, he had to go out and make plays. But there were some head scratching decisions made. Scotty, I don't know if now that Slaps isn't here, do we just use this as an opportunity where you can just kind of like give us the lowdown? Like, on this segment of LeatherBrainz, we're going to say what happened with Dan Campbell this week. And Scotty's going to break it down for us on what happened with Dan Campbell this week. Scotty, go ahead.
Well, this is a tale of two halves for Dan Campbell. And honestly, I'll say this, because I've said a lot of shit about Dan Campbell. I think, from my perspective, all of it earned, because he has made some ridiculous boneheaded decisions and has been pulled out of the abyss by his incredible football team. And that's true. But looking at this Lions team in 2024, Dan Campbell has made far fewer of those very stupid decisions. It seems like he's sort of matured. Maybe it's just the fact that they got a kicker that they can finally trust, and they feel like maybe they can make a little bit smarter decisions in the key moments of games. In this game, he did run a fake punt on their own 30-yard line. It got stuffed, and if they didn't kick this game-winning field goal, if he missed or it got blocked or something, that's the play we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that this was a neck-and-neck game. You gave the Vikings a free possession basically in the red zone because you did something stupid, but they did make the kick, so it is what it is. To me, with Dan Campbell making fewer of those dumb decisions, and then I look at this Lions team objectively, with Jared Goff playing as well as he is, this is the best team in the NFL. This is to me, and there are a lot of good teams, especially in the NFC right now, but this is the best team in the NFL with the product that they're showing on the field. And I said week 1 last year, I said that the Lions were a playoff team. I was early on the bandwagon there. This year, the Lions are a Super Bowl team. This is a team that at this point in time, if they keep playing like they're playing, I would be surprised if they are not vying for another Super Bowl appearance, by the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree. You go back to last season, they were a half away from playing in the Super Bowl. They just kind of fumbled at the end at San Francisco, and that kind of, obviously did them in. That was it. I think that I agree with you. The thing that makes this hurt if you're a Lions fan is that Aiden Hutchinson is done for the season, and not having a pass rush at times in this game reared its ugly head because Darnold had time to complete some passes downfield, which I think the Lions should have put this game away much earlier. The Vikings are honestly very fortunate. Montgomery had a late fumble, which they returned for a scoop and score, which tightened this game up even more. And so the Lions made some mistakes along the way, but they made some mistakes along the way and still won a game going away against the Vikings, who, up to this point, we were jokingly saying Darnold MVP ? And I think if you're a Vikings fan, you came into this game, and one of the main questions Vikings fans have had all along is, can Darnold actually lead a comeback? Like, okay, we're up. He can make plays on time. Things are looking good, but can he lead a comeback? And, he attempted to. They started to put some drives together towards the end. He started really focusing in on Justin Jefferson, which fucking you should be. And
Justin Jefferson had some ridiculous catches in this game.
Yeah,
I know you were listening on the radio, but there were at least 2 of them in the first half that I saw that I was like, I said out loud, no other receiver in the NFL can make that catch. Like, Justin Jefferson is just phenomenal.
Yeah, you said it, the Lions are the best. Do you think these are the 2 best teams in the NFC?
I think so. I think so at this point. Green Bay is certainly making a run for it right now. But when Sam Darnold is playing well and he's able to utilize these weapons, I mean, they don't even have Hawkinson yet. Like that's Hawkinson could come in and be their number 2 pass catcher. And they don't even have him on the field yet, and they're dicing teams up. And then their defense, of course, is ridiculous. Jared Goff, made us all second guess that because he just played phenomenally in the wake of maybe the best defense in the NFL, which just goes to show how good the Lions are, because the Vikings have already proven through the first 6 weeks that they are the real deal. So I do think that both of these teams, when I watch a game like this, it's like it doesn't really matter who wins and who loses. I think any given Sunday, either of these teams could beat anybody in the league.
Yeah, I agree. This was certainly a fun one, and I know a much anticipated NFC North battle. And I agree with you. I think the Packers are right there. The Lions get the Packers here in a few weeks at Green Bay, so that's going to be. I think people are circling that one because that might be the next iteration of this. Who's on top in the NFC North? You know what sucks if you're a Vikings fan? You're undefeated. You lose one game and now you're in second. And you're like, all right, well, that's how the NFC North is, man. That's how it's going to go. Yeah. Speaking of how it's going to go, I think the Falcons are feeling that, up and down kind of feeling with them. Certainly not a score I don't think anybody necessarily predicted was going to happen. I don't know if this flew under the radar for most people, but the Falcons dropped one in kind of shocking fashion to the Seahawks. They got boat raced. It was 34-14. Cousins was decent. Robinson was decent. I don't know if you had a chance to sit down and watch this game. I think if you're just watching Red Zone or you watched it scroll along the bottom, you're just kind of like, huh? Yeah. Like, I don't know what to make of this Falcons team. Once again, this is another year where we're like, I don't know what to do with this team.
Yeah, and it's disappointing because, I've been high on the Falcons since the offseason, and I do think that they have the weapons on paper to make something happen. The problem is the big issue that they had last year was they couldn't get a pass rush, and at first, it kind of seemed like they might have addressed that issue, but over the course of this season, we've learned that really opposing quarterbacks have an opportunity to do whatever they want. And Geno Smith and this Seahawks team, they're an above-average team, and it's one of those things that I don't think the Seahawks are going to be like they might be a wild card team or they might get a playoff win. They're going to be kind of right on the edge there. I think the Falcons have potential to be better than that, but the Seahawks team is no slouch. And, they have weapons everywhere. They can put up some offense on you. And if you're going to give Geno Smith all day to throw, he's going to be able to dice you up. Bijan Robinson finally had a good game, and it comes in the wake of this Falcons team that played okay in the first half, and it seemed like they had potential to build some momentum in the second half, and then Kirk Cousins throws 2 interceptions. And when that happens, it all just falls apart. So I think the game was closer than what the score actually shows. I do think the Falcons can still compete with pretty much anybody, but the Seahawks team also just can't be, I've kind of brushed them under the rug throughout the beginning of this season, and I do think that, they're just one of those any given Sunday teams too, where if they show up and they play well, they can compete.
Yeah, you nail on the head. You hit it. That was the turnovers were the difference. Seahawks didn't turn the ball over at all, and Kirk Cousins turned it over 3 times. He had 2 interceptions and a fumble. That's going to doom your team, right? Like, you can't, especially if your defense is unable to turn the other team over. You already are, you're just bleeding at that point. So we'll see where this Falcons team ends up. Agreed, Bijan, I was happy to see him get back on track. Kyle Pitts, 7 receptions, 65 yards. He's kind of vibing,
Hunter, I know you're going to be listening to this. He said 3 weeks ago that if Kyle Pitts scores 10 fantasy points in 4 consecutive games, he's back on the Kyle Pitts train. And despite what this Falcons team has looked like, kind of up and down, Kyle Pitts now through 3 games has had well over 10 fantasy points. So, Hunter, we'll welcome you back on the train whenever you're ready. Yeah. We'll see what happens this week.
Kyle Pitts, no matter what, forever and always on this podcast. Just kind of a motto that we've all adopted. The only other thing to come out of this game, if you're listening, something to watch, DK Metcalf went out with a knee injury. It kind of like flopped, hyperextended, kind of weird to the side. So I know as we're filming this, I haven't seen the update. So apologies if there is one, but something to keep in mind, especially for a fan of the Seahawks or fantasy football purposes. You want to keep an eye on that one. Other wide receivers you're going to want to keep your eye on are Davante Adams, who might be in somewhat of a loop, might feel like the Twilight Zone or Groundhog's Day. Davante Adams this last week, he lost to the Steelers, then was traded to the Jets, and then lost to the Steelers again. So I don't know how that works. Like, that just really must suck. You lose to the same team twice, and he didn't play that other game because his hamstring was hurting. But it's healed now. The Jets again. I mean, man, this is on Rodgers now, correct? Like, we're giving him the weapons. You lose to Dangerous, 37-15. Nothing looked great. Robert Saleh, like, is he just smiling? Like, where does this Jets team go from here? I mean, congrats to the Steelers, but I think this game, the headlines are going to be about obviously Rodgers and, where does this team go? Like, you drop another one.
This one is also kind of a double-edged sword situation because some people might say Salah was never the problem. And, I, as someone who, I'm not a Jets fan, I watch them, but it's not like I'm on the inside of any of these conversations. I saw Salah, and he made some blunders in the media this offseason, didn't conduct himself totally intelligently, but when you look at him and you hear him talk, he seems like he would be a good football coach. He doesn't seem like when you look at Nathaniel Hackett take the podium, you're like, that guy's a moron. And you don't get that vibe from Robert Salah. So some people are saying it was never Robert Salah. This is just a team with all sorts of issues, and Salah was just a part of the broader problem. But then the other side, I don't know if you heard Collinsworth say during the broadcast of this game that Salah is still in contact with all of the coaches every day. And I'm like, oh, so they got rid of him, but he's still just coaching the team. And so that's a good way to not fix any of the problems.
It's a group text with everybody. They just removed Rodgers.
I don't know. It's a weird situation over there. But the big thing with the Jets is there are so many problems on this team, and the acquisition of Davante Adams, I agree, it was kind of a cool, savvy move because they got blown out. They got their ass kicked by the Bills, and then they're like, oh, we don't have to talk about that. Look at this new toy that we just acquired. And they just completely flipped the media narrative on its head overnight. But pretending that Davante Adams was going to come in and just change everything about this franchise, I mean, they've got way more problems than just on offense. And certainly offense is one of them, but it's just the Jets are the Jets. I mean, you have Garrett Wilson, who is a top 10 wide receiver, getting the ball, bouncing off his chest for a turnover, and that's just something that happens to the Jets. And I don't know how to shake it. I don't know what the reason is. It's just they're bewitched or something. But I don't know what the solution is for this team that on paper seems like they should be really good. Yeah,
I mean, Rodgers came out and had to quote like, he's done listening to the media, which I don't know when he was ever listening to the media to begin with, but that's his take. We're in prime Rodgers against media territory now because the media is going to come after him, and I think he knows it. If you watch this game, or if you pull up some highlights, Rodgers was just like underthrowing some balls, just not hitting people where he needed to. He's checking to go routes to Mike Williams, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, you have two talented wide receivers on your team. You could say you have 2 top 10 wide receivers on your team right now, depending on how you value Garrett Wilson. And you look at the box score at the end of this game, and your leading receiver was Breece Hall, and Breece Hall got majority of those yards on 160-yard screen. And so I just don't know what the offensive philosophy is. They're not executing very well. And I know you brought in Davante Adams, and so you almost bought yourself 2 weeks to say we're waiting for this to mesh. But NFL, you don't have 2 weeks. Like we're, damn near halfway through the season already, which is kind of depressing. And you look at some of these records and you're like, okay, I don't know if this is going to happen. And the Bills are getting better. Obviously, they made the acquisition of Amari Cooper, who looked good in his first game. We'll touch on that in just a bit, but it's just tough sledding. Tua's going to be coming back for the Dolphins, which I don't know what his brain's going to do. But if you're a Jets fan, as great as it is to have Rodgers and his Achilles intact this season, it's like, man, you almost liked the hope of what it could be rather than seeing it actually play out. Because I think it's kind of a sad reality of where this team is right now.
Well, let's talk about Russ too, because he looked pretty good. He looked like he looked in the tail end of last season with the Broncos when they were still losing games, but you weren't blaming it on Russ anymore. And he had a couple boneheaded throws, but then it's almost like you can see the difference between him and Justin Fields. Justin Fields has the rushing ability, but Russ has the touch. Russ can put the ball in places that Justin Fields couldn't. And that added another element to the Steelers offense, and they actually looked like they were, the Jets defense, say what you will about the Jets, maybe they're all just depressed and they can't play well anymore because they're sad, but the Jets defense is good, and Russ was kind of dicing them up a little bit. I don't know, Mike Tomlin was put in the fire a little bit for switching from Justin Fields, but he's around these guys every day. He knows what's up. Justin Fields seems like a good locker room guy, whether he's playing or not. So maybe this decision was just the smart decision.
Yeah, we talk about Tomlin a lot because, we joke that the Steelers are 500, they'll get to one game above 500 and then they'll make the playoffs. And a lot of this is Tomlin. And Tomlin he had a press conference and they asked him this question about switching to Russ, like how, what made him make this decision. And his comment was, I'm compensated fairly well, like, hey, you pay me to make this choice and I know what I'm doing. And shout out to him, because I don't know if you polled the broader NFL community, if they would have said, yeah, let's go ahead and put Russ in, which is probably why you saw a lot of the hand wringing. But I agree. Nobody throws a deep ball like Russ. It's a beautiful, just rainbow shot, gives the wide receiver the ability to catch it. Sometimes it's just right in their hands. And he did look really good. If you talk about the juxtaposition of Russell Wilson, what he's coming on and trying to like reignite his career, and then where Rodgers is, where seemingly he has everything in his hands, and you're like, yeah, this is quite off. And the coaching is certainly part of it. I think Tomlin does wonders for this team and puts them in the right position to make plays. And so definitely plus it. And we'll see where Russell Wilson shakes out. Hopefully he continues to build. We'll see what the Steelers can put together, but they certainly look like a very, 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 very solid team in the AFC, and definitely on track to sneak into the playoffs and mess with people again. Same thing.
Tomlin's going to be employed till he's 90 because he's just reliable.
Yeah, if you have a good record in the AFC, but you don't get the 1 seed, you're just going to be playing the Steelers week 1. Like if you're like the 2 seed, you're like, all right, I got the Steelers. I just got to get ready for Tomlin. So that's pretty much your gift.
For 10 years.
That's your gift. Another great game ended in another walk-off field goal, was one in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Texans fall to the Packers like I said, on that last second field goal. But I think the story here is CJ Stroud really seemed to struggle. His weapons seemed to be failing him a little bit, and he was kind of showing some sophomore slumps, some would say, when you talk about quarterbacks. And everybody's high on CJ. I think he has all the talent in the world, but like, where did you come out on this? Did you feel like this was a matchup of two really good teams? Did you feel like they kind of limped through it? I'll give you my summary, but I want to know what you thought of this game between the Texans and Packers.
Yeah, this is one of the I had to choose between this game and the Lions game because I was at my niece's birthday party. So I didn't have Red Zone available to me, so I just chose the Lions game. So I kind of been catching up on this one. Obviously surprised to see the stat line from CJ Stroud, but again, this is a situation where the Texans have sort of been underperforming. They, like everybody else, have dealt with some injuries, but they haven't been the team that we kind of expected them to be. But I still think they are good enough to be in most of their games. So when I look at a score like this, I look at this tight game, I look at the fact that, CJ Stroud was struggling, so they ended up turning to Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon had a career day. Like, this is a team that can figure out how to be competitive even when things aren't going exactly their way. I think this is just a matchup between two really good teams, and I think even if the stat lines were similar, if this game was not played in Lambeau, we could be talking about the complete opposite outcome.
Right.
Like that's just how competitive these two guys are. So again, I don't really take anything away from either of these teams, maybe except for the fact that the Packers are really good. Like they are going to be one of those top 3 teams in the NFC because they just look unstoppable. And Jordan Love is just the next coming of, every Green Bay quarterback in our lifetimes. It's just you step on Lambeau Field and you are incredible.
Those assholes. If you're a Green Bay fan, F you. You've never really had to deal with any lull in quarterback. It's just kind of like, oh, who's the next guy that's going to come in here and be amazing? It was really the tale of two quarterbacks. You had CJ Stroud, who couldn't complete it to everybody, and then Jordan Love was completing it to everybody, including the opposition. He threw 2 picks, obviously had 220 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I mean, he likes to sling it. I know Houston was definitely trying to keep it on the ground. I know they were struggling. Stephon Diggs, I want to talk about him for a second because he joins the Texans from the Bills. Obviously his fall off seems pretty dramatic, and I don't know if it's how they're using him or if it's just him as a player, but the more impactful thing he did was a pregame fight with Jair Alexander. And that was kind of it. And I don't know what you do, because you say the Texans don't have any weapons, but I mean, they kind of do. Tank Dell, I don't know where the hell he is. He's on a milk carton. Stephon Diggs isn't helping him. And I think if you're a Texans fan, it's kind of like, oof, you really need, if you want to take that next step in this AFC, you really need guys to step up for you that you brought in.
Yeah, looking at the stats, Xavier Hutchinson leads the team with he didn't lead the team with receiving yards. Dalton Schultz leads the team with receiving yards with 28. Stephon Diggs had 23. Cade Stover had 15. Xavier Hutchinson had 11. Tank Dell is nowhere to be found. Stephon Diggs is largely ineffective. Like, I do think that, they do have weapons, and it's a unique situation because when CJ Stroud got drafted to the Texans, we're like, oh, he's screwed. There's nobody there. And then all of a sudden we realized, oh, when you have a good quarterback, you can kind of create weapons out of the maybe placeholder receivers that you have. And now we look at people like Tank Dell and we say, oh, this guy's incredible. And we expect them to perform every week, but we have to remember that these guys were kind of nobodies for a while. Stephon Diggs is coming off a season with Buffalo where he basically did nothing, and they just kind of have to make it work, and it's not going to look pretty each and every week. And when your quarterback's throwing for 85 yards, it's just not going to be, the product that you want. But I do think that they have potential still, just based on what we saw from CJ Stroud, what we've seen continually, notwithstanding with this game. This is a team that's going to be good, and I don't think that I'm going to hold them to too much with this one game.
No, not at all. I think, CJ did what he could do. They were obviously taking the passing away, and it's evident with Mixon rushing for over 100 yards and had 2 touchdowns. So shout out to the Mixon owners. You definitely got your money's worth for that pick. NFL's a what have you done for me lately league. It's a week to week thing. If you're a Texans fan, obviously don't panic, but this is a really good Packers team. I think that's the thing that I'm taking away from this. Not anything against the Texans. They'll figure it out. But this Packer team is for real. I think they have a really, really, really good shot of being in the NFC Championship game. I think they have all the pieces offensively and defensively to get it done. They're in a really tough division, but I think it's going to make them better for it in the end. Another quarterback that's dealing with some things. We got to talk about this, and we have a couple key points for this one. Browns, Bengals. Headline out of this one is Deshaun Watson blew out his Achilles. And if you watch the video footage, it was, I don't know if you've watched a lot of Achilles being blown out. It was the same thing. It snapped. You see the leg kind of shake, and that's kind of it. And he obviously fell writhing in pain, and he was crying and obviously upset. But the thing that you really want to take away from this one is how the Browns fan reacted to the whole thing. Not only did Deshaun Watson get booed in pregame when he was running out on the field and they're announcing everybody, the Browns fans then cheered when he was carted off the field and was hurt, and they knew that he was no longer going to.
They chanted, "You deserve it. You deserve it." Like you could hear it on the broadcast.
What are we doing?
Well,
I get whatever you're thinking about Deshaun Watson, and obviously he has a lot of allegations and settlement and things thrown his way about misconduct with the ladies, the masseuses. That's a tough look. I mean, you saw some of the players come out and speak in his defense, and they were obviously not very happy with it. obviously we as fans only know what we know because the media gives us what they give us. We don't know what Deshaun was like to his teammates and what he meant to that team. And if you're truthfully a Browns fan and you're a fan of that team, what a terrible look for you supporting your team to outwardly celebrate an injury. I think it's downright despicable. I think if you're a Browns fan and you were out that game and you were celebrating that, you should be ashamed of yourself. I don't know where you shake out on that. That's kind of where I fall. I think that's just a bad look. Even if he's accused of doing what he's doing, like you just can't do that because of how it affects the rest of the team.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the way that it affects the rest of the team. I mean, if you're someone like Nick Chubb and you just like, oh, I just showed up to this and now our home crowd is cheering that our starting quarterback is out for the season. Like, what am I involved in here? Part of me is like, initially, my initial thought is, yeah, okay, like grow up a little bit. You shouldn't be doing that shit. The other part of me is like, Browns fans are the most demoralized people on the face of planet Earth. And one thing that we have to realize is it's the same conversation that we'll have with the Giants fans booing Saquon Barkley. It's not that they don't like Saquon Barkley. It's that when you are booing at the game, that's like that's like voting for the American people. That's like the way that you can express your opinion, and not necessarily just for that player, but for the organization as a whole, but for the, the owners, the GM. And I think that Browns fans are just like, Jesus Christ, somebody change something about what we're having to deal with. And so they're going to boo at every opportunity. And there's no question,
I'd hear that.
For me, even if you took away all the allegations and all the things that, people think about Deshaun, his play on the field this season was enough that they probably would have booed him anyway, even if he was just a stand-up guy and never did anything wrong. Just based on his play on the field, if he goes down and they're like, thank God we don't have to watch this idiot ever again, maybe ever again, I think they might have booed him either way. So part of me is like, hey, grow up. The other part of me is like, yeah, I get it. Fans are going to be fans. It is what it is.
You think they're just growing tired of it overall?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine what it's like to be a Browns fan right now? It's got to be the worst thing in the world. Like, just absolutely terrible. You're just a laughing stock of the NFL, and you have been for forever.
Yeah.
And then, they go out and make this big move for this guy that nobody really likes because of his past and whatever, and he hasn't really performed. And then he just sucks, absolutely sucks. And then on top of that, imagine you're a Browns fan, you see him go down, maybe you're one of the reasonable people who didn't boo, and you're like, but finally, we get to see Jameis Winston. And then they throw DTR in, and you're like, what the fuck are we doing? Why is Jameis Winston not playing? Like, it's just, I don't know, one thing after another. It's got to be terrible.
There's always something going on with the Browns, isn't it? And I will say this, prior to the injury, Deshaun Watson was 15 of 17 for 128 yards. He was dealing, he was dealing before he went down. So I think that's kind of the other thing was he was starting to find his footing, and you can say what you want about the Bengals defense. I think a lot of people have been dealing against the Bengals defense, unfortunately, but he was putting something together. This game decided by the opening kickoff. Bengals win by 7, but that opening kickoff goes for 7. That makes you feel pretty good about yourself. All right, so obviously we want Jameis Winston. We're a Jameis Winston podcast. We love that dude. I think he makes the game fun. He's obviously going to yeet that ball over the field, and God knows who he's going to complete it to, but we're going to have fun watching him do it. Do you think we've seen the last game for Deshaun Watson in a Browns uniform?
I don't know. I've been reading all about this and all the people with different theories about how they get Deshaun out without, selling the next 5 years of their franchise down the river. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. If he leaves, they have like a $78 million cap hit guaranteed, nothing they can do about it for 2 straight years. Like, what do you do? What do you do with that? And I know, we saw the Broncos do this with Russell Wilson to a little bit lesser of a degree, but they're just like, I don't care what we're paying him. He's not worth it. Get him off the field. And, say what you will about Sean Payton, but that sort of decisiveness of just being like, hey, we'll deal with the ramifications, but we know we're not going to win with this guy, so let's move on and let's start something new. I mean, you go ask Broncos fans how they feel about their situation, because that's, again, a team that still has a lot of work to do, but if you compare them to how they looked the last 2 years, those fans are happy with where they're at. And Browns fans are just yearning for some sort of decision like that. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it on the books. I'm not a genius. I'm not involved in the inner circle, but it seems like this isn't working. And when something's not working, you gotta change it up and deal with the ramifications, whatever they are. And on top of that, having Jameis Winston, at least you're going to have something that is entertaining to watch. You're going to sell tickets. You're going to have fans that get bought back in. So if you need to, have Jameis Winston be your starting quarterback for a couple of years. And it's like you're probably not going to win a ton of games, but it's going to be fun. Your fans are going to be back invested, and they're going to thank God that you got rid of this ridiculous decision that you made a couple of years ago with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to have to figure it out. I think we've seen the last game with him. I think the Browns are eager to move on. They're going to figure something out to get him off his books, and they might have to eat it. But I think we've seen the last time we've seen Deshaun suit up, which is really sad way for him to go out. But I mean, if you did all that stuff, then you feel how you feel. I think I'm just a player on the field.
I do want to say too, how funny would it have been? We're Chiefs fans. We got this situation with the Bengals. How funny would it have been if Deshaun Watson just has his career game with the Browns against the Bengals?
Dude,
if he
was trending.
That and they blew out the Bengals, that might have been better than any Super Bowl we've won.
It was trending. Incredible. The Bengals are perplexing. I mean, they put up, the Browns have a good defense, so I'm not going to take anything away there. That's tough to move the ball on them, and a win's a win. But they get past the Jets, who don't look very good. They get past the Browns, who are 1-6. The Bengals obviously coming up, they have the Eagles. And I know we're going to talk about that on the kickoff karaoke that we have. And that's going to be a kind of another litmus test for the Bengals to see where they're actually at. I think it's going to be a really exciting game because you have two teams kind of like passing in different directions where you're like, all right, are the Eagles for real? And they beat the Giants. Nothing really to write home about there except for Daniel Jones sucks. And a lot of people are also trying to figure out how you get rid of Daniel Jones. But that's going to be an interesting game coming up for the Eagles and Bengals of like, where are we? Who are we? I think that's what that game's going to be titled, is like, who are we? And if the Eagles come away and handle business, I think that kind of tells you where both of those teams are going. But if the Bengals can go out and then beat the Eagles as they're getting back to full strength, I mean, then, if you're the AFC, now you're on alert because the Bengals are starting to figure it out and starting to get healthy and are learning how to win again. And so they're doing what they've done the last few seasons. So we'll see which way that goes coming up next week. Another game, which was really, really weird. The Chiefs are still your last. The Chiefs are your last remaining unbeaten team in the NFL as they get by the San Francisco 49ers in a game where wide receivers were dying on the field, not literally, but pretty much. You weren't sure who they were throwing to. The Eagles the 49ers were depleted on offense coming into this game against the Chiefs, as were the Chiefs with the coming into against the 49ers. In game, you had Juju Smith pulling up with a hamstring. You had Ayuk go down. It confirmed he has a torn ACL. He's going to be out for the year. And you basically just had two teams and two quarterbacks that combined for 5 interceptions, no touchdowns. And I don't know. I mean, the Chiefs are winning. That's fine. I also think some of this is terrible interception luck from Mahomes. I don't think all these are on him. I do think he's not playing very well. But they're winning. And you have the 49ers who are going the opposite way, and they're losing with it. So I don't know what to make of this game other than it was just kind of a weird. You're looking up on your phone who some of these guys are that are coming in both on offense and defense. And I mean, if you're a Chiefs fan, happy to get the win, happy to be where you're at, undefeated, but you're still looking at yourself like, when is this offense going to figure something out?
Yeah. As a Chiefs fan, I just keep going back to the fact that, we're undefeated. And you look at the other teams in the AFC that could potentially be the biggest risk factors for us down the line, and they're not undefeated. And so some of these ticky-tack games that were like, I can't really take anything away, a bunch of injuries, it was weird. The opposing offense didn't do anything, couldn't do anything. The Chiefs haven't been tested. They haven't put their offense together. It's like none of that really matters because the Chiefs are up so many games now on all of their opponents. And if they continue to find a way to win, as long as they figure out how to put it together in the postseason like they do every year, this team could very well be another Super Bowl team. Like, I don't know. I keep falling back on the fact, like, I get on my knees and pray to the Lord Jesus Christ for Steve Spagnuolo because that man has single-handedly over the last few seasons
100%.
kept us in so many games. Like, it's absolutely crazy. And, the 49ers have a good defense too. It was kind of just a battle of defenses and which offense wouldn't throw the game away. And the Chiefs came out on top like they do so often. And I just think Steve Spagnuolo, so many people hate the Chiefs. They talk about the refs. They talk about this and that. Mahomes, he gets all this praise, but he sucks. There's a lot of discourse around there. And Steve Spagnuolo does not get nearly enough credit because he has consistently run one of the best defenses in football for several years now. And he is maybe the biggest reason why the Chiefs are on this dominant run right now.
Oh, I think it's the sole reason. If you look at this offense, they've limped their way through 2 seasons and they figured it out in the playoffs both times where they kind of put it together, beating the Eagles and then the 49ers in back-to-back Super Bowls. But going into the playoffs, it was largely the same thing. And there was the narrative, the Chiefs are gettable. The Chiefs are gettable. You can beat them now. You can beat them now. And this defense is really the only reason that they're in this position. Like, you have batted ball from Mahomes goes in the air. It's picked off. Worthy falls down on a route. That's picked off. And it's like, it's a young team. You look at what this team and what they practice, in the offseason and what they're supposed to be, unlike some of these other teams, like you Hollywood Brown was out in the preseason, didn't even get to see him. You had Rashee Rice coming in and he was filling that void and playing well. Then he goes out. Worthy, as explosive as he is, he's still rookie. He's making plays where he can. But it's just this is how it's going to be. I would say 2 of your most competent pass catchers right now are 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
You have Kelsey and Noah Gray. And those are like the only 2 weapons on the offense where you're like, all right, this guy can like move the ball for me or catch it. Even Hardman was iffy. Sky Moore can't even catch a pass.
No.
And you have that on the heels of, just scrolling across it. It looks like the Saints have agreed to a deal with MVS. So
wow, look at that.
They're not bringing MVS back either. So I don't know what this team's going to do. I know Reed famously is like, well, this is a tough system for wide receivers come in. Dumb it down then. Shit, get somebody in here to catch a ball. It's not, you don't need to know a lot to just go run like a go route or, like a stick route, something like work something in here and get somebody in to catch it. But
so
definitely perplexing.
From one Chiefs fan to another, I want to pick your brain because through 2 seasons now, this offense has looked pretty much terrible. I mean, if we didn't have the defense that we had, we're talking about a Chiefs team that has completely fallen off because we're not winning half the games that we're winning without this defense. Andy Reid is untouchable. He has done enough that nobody's going to question him. What about Matt Nagy? Is it time for us to be like, what is this guy's role? Is he having an impact on why this offense isn't working? I don't know if we're at the point where we should be having that conversation about this offense and how they're underperforming so consistently.
I don't know. If you go back to the height of the offensive powers, I mean, it all began with Matt Nagy. Bieniemy kind of took that over and kept running with it, but a lot of it started with Nagy. And weapons are an issue. Trust is an issue. If you don't have them, it gets tough. If, in like playing the competition, they are like, these are good teams. They're when you win a division, you're first place, you're playing a first place schedule. Like that's the whole point of the parity of the NFL. And I don't think a lot of like day-to-day fans understand that. Like if you finish last in your division, you're probably playing your schedule's lined up that you're playing all the other teams that finish last as well. Like you're kind of matched up against them to create that parity. And I don't know. It's tough. Mahomes is, obviously, right now people are going to harp on his stat line of 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, but he's making plays when he has to make them. You look at that last drive to seal that game. He's throwing it to Kelsey. He's falling down and throwing a dart to Gray. He's running. He's trucking defenders to get into the end zone. Like,
that was sick.
At the end of the day, there's something to say about that. As much as the current NFL is set up and a lot of the fanboys on Reddit or X or Twitter look at how good my quarterback is based on his stats. Like, I appreciate that as a fan, but if you walked up to the Bengals and like, hey, would you rather have Mahomes stats and a 6-0 record, or would you rather have your record and have Burrow stats? Like, and I think that's part of the problem. And I don't want to get on a soapbox on this episode, but I do have a real problem with teams. NFL fans now seem to be more fans of the individual stat line. It's almost like the LeBron era of sports. As long as my player that I'm a fan of, like my favorite player, has like great stats, I don't care about anything else. I don't care if we win or lose. As long as I can say, look at my stats my guy has and why he's better than yours. Okay. I can hear that, but the outcome is the end of the game. He's putting the team in position to win and they get it done at the end. And that's, sometimes that's just how it goes. You're not going to have the explosive Chiefs team every year. And if you can match him up and have an MVP, he was 2 years removed from an MVP season and winning a Super Bowl. So what's the difference? The continuity of the playmakers is a difference. The trust to make plays. A lot of that isn't on him, and some of that is on him, and they got to figure that out. But very thankful to be figuring that out and be undefeated. If I'm a Chiefs fan,
100%.
The flip side of that is you're a 49ers fan and you have Ayuk going down with a knee injury. Purdy, I know it's probably Spagnuolo, but he had an abysmal day. 3 picks, threw one in the end zone. That was a pick. He was just not on target at all with a lot of them. He had one where he threw it right into his own lineman's head. And I'm like, this did not look like the Purdy. So I don't know if the coverage, and then again, shout out to Spagnuolo, he keeps him off balance because, Mason was running over everybody up until this game and couldn't do anything. It seemed like he was stonewalled. He had one gain for 20 some yards and ended up finishing with 58. So this was an odd game for the 49ers, and I will give them a pass because Jennings was out. Debo was sick, and then Ayuk tore his ACL. So they were in the exact same position the Chiefs were in, where it's we're kind of throwing to nobody. I have Kittle and Kelsey, and then we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah. What do you think about, because, it's always, I don't know if I'm a masochist or whatever, but I always find something to get really angry about with Chiefs wins. And normally it's the refs and all these idiots making these ridiculous claims that the NFL's rigged and there's some master conspiracy going on. In this game, it was Patrick Mahomes on his career-long rush when he was running along the sideline, made some moves, and almost got into the end zone. And everyone's saying, look at this guy. He's faking running out of bounds. It's just like the fake slide. This is crazy. You can't have it both ways. Bro, are you saying that a rushing quarterback is not allowed to be near the sideline? What if they go near the sideline, they just got to give themselves up no matter what? When I watch the replay, I don't see Mahomes. It's not like the fake slide. I don't see him actively playing the rules. I see him just making a play. Normally he'd go out of bounds there. He didn't this time. I don't think that's because he's just some, douchebag trying to take advantage of the rules. I think he was making a play, and just because he's near the sideline doesn't automatically make him a supervillain.
Yeah, I see both sides of this. I mean, if you go back and watch it, he was sprinting, angling towards going out of bounds, and then he stopped on a dime and continued upfield. Was that a fake going out of the bounds? Semantics, I don't know. I think I do think this isn't just a Mahomes thing though, because the NFL wants to take care of its quarterbacks. That's the only reason that this league survives is on its quarterbacks. And you can say it's rigged, you can say whatever you want, but when you have a quarterback like that, they changed rules for Brady to keep him upright and producing up into his 40s because they wanted the quarterbacks are what drives this league. That is what drives viewership. That's why people turn on the TV. It's the quarterbacks. You're not, no offense, you're not going to turn on and clear your Sunday afternoon to watch Spencer Rattler. You're just not. Unless you're a diehard Saints fan, you are not doing that. But you might turn it on to see what Pat Mahomes is going to do, or what Josh Allen's going to do, or Joe Burrow or Rodgers. It's about keeping these guys upright. So on one side, I get it, because it is a double standard. Because if somebody were to come in and tattoo Pat as he was angling out that way, you might have seen a flag come out. I don't know if they would or wouldn't have, but I could see the hand wringing for that. Now, that being what it was, he was in bounds the whole time. It's not like he put a foot over the line and then didn't put it down and then kept running and everybody stopped playing. Everybody was playing. The linebacker over pursued and he continued up. I think the only saving grace was if you were following the game on either Reddit or X and you saw the comments, some of them were like, oh, they should have laid him out. If this was old school, he would have ran him over. And then 2 plays later, he's running over their DB to get in the end zone. So it was all right, that was poetic justice at the end. I get it. I get both sides. If you're a Chiefs fan, you just got to roll with it. The hate's the hate. And you just kind of got to make peace with it as you go along.
Hate is a privilege. That's what I keep telling myself.
Hate is a privilege. All right. That's going to wrap it on the game talk. Those were some fun ones that, this past week, a lot to dive into. I'm excited for next week. We got some very interesting games. We're going to kick it off with the Kickoff Karaoke, our final segment. If you've been not following, we're going to go ahead and give you a recap of what we're doing here. So Slap, Scotty, and I are picking 4 games each week against the spread. So when we're picking these teams, we're not saying who's going to win outright. We're just picking against the spread, and sometimes it does lean that way that it is the outright win. but we're picking games against the spread. Now, why is it called Kickoff Karaoke? Well, if one of us dumbasses picks the least games right against the spread, so if we have the lowest correct total at the end of the season, they have to sing the national anthem live on one of our episodes. So warming up our voices, quick rundown of where we're at right now. Scotty leading the way, 18 correct through week 7. Congrats to you picking 18 right against the spread. You should really go put money on these. I think you might be able to win a little bit.
Well, I'm barely over 50%. So far it's like,
that's all you need. That's all you need.
Yes.
That's Vegas, baby. I'm in second with 15, and then Slaps is rounding us out with 11. So he's got some ground to make up here. He's starting to fall back behind. This week, our week 8 picks, the 4 games that we're going to be picking are Eagles at Bengals, Falcons at the Bucs, Bills at Seahawks, and then the Bears at Commanders. So we are going to start this one, Scotty. I'll kick us off, and then I'll say what Slaps was, and then I'll let you do yours. So Eagles at Bengals. We got Bengals at a 2.5 point favorite at home, which is pretty much a push because you normally get 3 for just being at home. So this is going to be a tight one. Scotty, what do you think?
This is, I don't know why I set it up where we're starting with maybe the hardest one.
Yeah.
Both of these teams are kind of on the up and up. Jalen Hurts finally got through a couple games without throwing picks. The Bengals obviously coming off a win, maybe questionable win, depending on how you look at it. But the Bengals offense has potential to put up 50 points. Like, they can put up points on anybody, and obviously the Eagles secondary leaves much to be desired. So the Bengals offense, if they show up, they can put up a ton of points in this game. But you can say the exact same thing about the Eagles. And now they've got their weapons back. They're going against a Bengals secondary, or a Bengals defensive unit that has just been absolutely terrible. So I'm leaning toward going with the team that I think is more complete, which I do think is the Eagles. I think the Eagles have a good chance to come in and win a tight one, in an away game. But, man, this one could really go either way. It really just depends on if Joe Burrow can keep up with how bad his own defense is. If he can do that, they can win. But that's the question every week with this team.
Yeah, Burrow's got to play clean. Slaps took the Bengals with the 2.5. I mean, so the Bengals winning by 1. I mean, you're still looking good, which I could see a 1 point victory for Cincinnati at home. 2.5, I feel like is kind of generous for the Bengals. And these lines are as they sit right now, so we're not following any live lines. I'm going to take the Bengals as well with Slaps. I think the Eagles, this is going to be a hate watch for me because I hate Nick Sirianni, and then I obviously don't care for the Bengals and Joe Burrow. So I'm going to be kind of like interested from both of those. I like the Eagles as a team. I just can't stand Nick Sirianni. Like, if the Eagles had a different coach, I would be so on board with them. I'd probably just have like a very, 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 very large boner watching them most weeks, but I just can't right now. So
very large.
Emphasis on very large, but I'm going to take the Bengals. So those are those. Scotty, you're on the outs on that one, so you can pick up a game on us. All right, next one. I don't know. I actually probably should switch that. Slaps is probably bad luck. All right, Falcons at Bucs. We got the Bucs as a 1.5 point favorite, so this is damn near pick 'em. Slaps is taking the Bucs at home. I am also going to take the Bucs at home. I think Mayfield. I'm still just going to err on Mayfield, and honestly, how the Falcons looked this last week against the Seahawks didn't kind of left me with a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know if this is where Kirk Cousins is trending. He started out hot and he was making some good plays, but I don't know. That was a rough one to get by, and I think a divisional game at home, I'm always going to lean with I'll take the points in the Bucs at home. Scotty, what do you think?
Yep, I agree with you 100%. It pains me to say because I thought by this point in the season we'd be looking at the Falcons sort of like how we're looking at the Vikings, like maybe not to that degree, but just like nobody kind of expected them to be this good, and I really thought we'd be having that conversation with them. But the Bucs are the Bucs. They're going to be very good, and they're probably not going to be a Super Bowl team anytime soon, but they're going to be very good. And the home field advantage does it for me. We saw how close this game was in their last matchup just a couple weeks ago in Atlanta. And I think you have to give the advantage to the Bucs in this one.
Yep, I agree. I think it's a good one. Next one, this was an interesting one. You have the Bills going to the Northwest, which always can be tricky. They're going to be at the Seahawks, land of the 12th man. It's kind of a fun one because you don't get to see. It's like when you see this one on paper, you're not used to seeing them play each other. So you're almost like, I kind of want to see what those helmets look like in that stadium.
Color matchup.
Yeah, it's a sweet one. The Bills helmets are sweet, and seeing them in that stadium is going to be sweet. So Bills are 3-point favorites at Seattle. Scotty, what do you think? You got Bills or Seahawks?
I'm riding high on the Bills right now. Josh Allen has not had any turnovers this season, which is crazy. Like, that's the opposite of what everyone has said about him for his entire career. He's played clean. When Keon Coleman looks like he's taken a step forward. Obviously, they made some additions at wide receiver that look like that's going to make quite a bit of a difference. The Bills are just on the up and up. And then on the flip side of that, the Seahawks, they're feeling a little complacent right now, I think, coming off this last win. I just think that we're going to, after this game, say, yeah, this is the Bills that we know and love. And we're going to see Josh Allen, put the team on his back a little bit, and they're going to put up some points. So the Seahawks are obviously a tough matchup, but I do think that the Bills are going to get it done.
Yeah, this is just a weird one because they have to travel. But I agree. I said it before the season. Josh Allen was my pick for MVP. I thought he was gonna have a big year. They keep winning. He keeps putting up stats. I think he's well on his way to winning that MVP. The Bills starting to look really good. That defense still, I still have questions about. And I think when you get into the colder months and things tighten up, I think that's where you really lean on your defense, and you kind of look to teams that maybe have that edge on the defensive end. But right now, I think the way they're playing is just, you can't complain if you're a Bills fan. Also taking the Bills 3 at Seattle.
Well, and Ray Davis too. We haven't talked about him much yet, but that guy he looks like the perfect addition to this offense to spell the other running backs in this room, because he looks efficient as hell. And maybe it's only been a couple games that we've really seen him active, but he led the Bills in rushing last week. So he's someone that can. He can come out and make a difference. And if you got to worry about James Cook, who's already kind of proven what he can do. And then, by the way, when James Cook is on the sideline, now you got this new guy that you've barely seen, and he's running all over people. So I just think the Bills are on the up and up. They're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. And then getting Keon Coleman off the deck, he had very productive. I think Amari Cooper is going to do a lot for the Bills. Obviously this year it's going to be the short term with Amari, but I think long term, what he's going to do for Coleman's development, seeing a true professional in the room and how he carries himself, is going to do wonders for them. So
did you see,
excited for them,
not to derail the conversation, but did you see on Amari Cooper's touchdown that he was like asking Keon Coleman what his route was? He was like, I don't know what to do. Keon's like showing him, you're running a fucking post, bro.
But shout out Keon Coleman, because they asked him about it in his interview, and he's like, no, he knew the play. He was just double checking. And it's like true teammate right there. Like that's a man's man. Yeah, for sure. Last one, we got the Bears at the Commanders. As it sits right now, the Commanders are 1.5 point favorites. The elephant in the room is if Jaden Daniels is going to play or not. As we pick this, we haven't heard anything to the contrary that he won't play. He was seen on the sidelines after their blowout win. It seems to be some sort of rib injury. He could play, he could not. I think I'm going to err on that he is playing. I'm going to take the Commanders in the 1.5. I think the way their offense just runs, even without him on there, I think is going to be too much for the Bears to overcome. I don't know if as good as they're starting to look, I don't know if they're in any position to begin to start making those plays as a team. So I'm going to take the Commanders at 1.5. Slaps is taking the Bears. He's taking the Bears at 1.5, which may be the smarter play. If Daniels is out, we'll have to see. Scotty, where are you at?
Yeah, this is an asterisk game, because I think if Jaden Daniels is in, I'm definitely going with the Commanders, because as good as the Bears defense has been, this Commanders team just looks like, when Jaden Daniels is playing well, they look like they can compete with anybody. But, if he's out, I don't expect Marcus Mariota to have a lot of success against this Bears defense. So I'm going to lean with the Commanders as well, because I'm hoping for good football. But if Jaden Daniels ends up being out for a couple weeks, this one's going to hurt a little bit. We're going to give Slaps a free point in our competition.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Actually, we should probably do that for him anyways. We miss him. Well, that wraps it up for the Kickoff Karaoke. We got our picks in. We'll see how we do. That wraps up the week 7 talk. We'll look forward to week 8. Scotty, my friend, it was so good to be on this episode with you.
Yes.
Let's see if we'll get. I actually won't be on the next one. It might just be you and Slaps on the next one. I will actually be in the Dominican Republic, soaking up the sun. So I will be out next week, and then I will be back in for the long haul as we march towards the Super Bowl again. But appreciate you again, as always, Brainiacs. Make sure you follow us on all our social media. We're on every social media platform. We love to interact with the community. So make sure that you're commenting, chiming in. You can visit our website, LeatherBrainz.com. Make sure you like and subscribe our posts. Scotty, we
are
out.
This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. This is our Colts, whether win or lose, we love them. For the shoe, Colts Forge, let the world hear us now. This is our team, go Colts.